Beneath the streets of Cincinnati lies a complete subway system that has never carried a single passenger. 2 miles of tunnels, 4 underground stations with platforms, staircases, and ventilation shafts. All of it was dug, tunneled, and built with public money, and then the city walked away. No track was ever laid, no train was ever ordered. The tunnels are still down there right now, sealed and waiting, exactly where they were left nearly 100 years ago. And the reason Cincinnati abandoned its own subway isn't engineering failure or bad design. It's stranger than that. It's a story about a city that wanted the future, voted for it, paid for it, and then changed its mind. By the end of this video, you'll know how much Cincinnati actually spent on a subway nobody rode. What happened when the government tried to turn those empty tunnels into a nuclear fallout shelter, and why. After 100 years of proposals, votes and plans, the city still can't bring itself to fill the hole in the ground or finish what it started. To understand how Cincinnati ended up with a subway it couldn't use, you have to go back to a canal it couldn't stand. The Miami and Erie Canal had been slicing through the heart of Cincinnati since 1827, connecting the Ohio River to Lake Erie. For decades, it was the city's lifeline. The reason Cincinnati became the pork-packing capital of America, the reason it earned the nickname Porkopolis. But by the early 1900s, the canal was obsolete. Railroads had killed the barge trade decades earlier, and the waterway had become an open sewer, a stagnant trench running through the middle of the city, breeding disease and dividing the downtown business district from the residential neighborhood of over the Rhine. The stench was unbearable in summer. The mosquitoes were worse. Cincinnati needed to get rid of it, and someone had an idea. Instead of just draining the canal and paving over it, why not dig deeper, build a subway in the old canal bed, replace one piece of dead infrastructure with something that could transform the city? Remember the canal bed. It matters later, because the subway was literally built in the grave of the thing it was supposed to replace. And some people would say it ended up becoming the same kind of monument to obsolescence. In 1912, the city formed a rapid transit commission and hired a Chicago transit planner. He proposed a 16-mile loop connecting downtown Cincinnati to its suburbs, Norwood, Oakley, Clifton, Walnut Hills, using a combination of underground tunnels, surface track, and elevated railway. The original estimate was $12 million. The commission cut it to $6 million and put it to the voters. On April 25, 1916, Cincinnati voted overwhelmingly in favor. Nearly 40,000 people voted yes. Fewer than 7,000 voted no. 86% of the city wanted this subway. The fare was set at 5 cents. And then nothing happened for 4 years. 11 days before the bond was approved, the United States had been edging toward the First World War. By April 1917, America was in it. Construction couldn't begin during wartime. Labor was scarce. Steel was diverted. Priorities shifted. The $6 million sat in the city's accounts while inflation quietly ate away at its value. By the time the war ended in 1918, those $6 million were worth far less than they had been in 1916. The budget that was supposed to build 16 miles of subway could now fund barely half of that. Construction finally began on January 28, 1920. Workers broke ground on Walnut Street, and for a few years the project moved with real momentum. Engineers adopted designs modeled on Boston's early subway system. In fact, the Cincinnati tunnels were built with construction materials and column designs nearly identical to stations like Park Street and Downtown Crossing. They tunneled through the old canal bed beneath what would become Central Parkway, boring twin tubes wide enough for passenger trains. The work was brutal. Crews excavated the canal trench in the open, poured reinforced concrete walls and ceilings, and then backfilled on top. Photographs from the era show men standing waist-deep in mud, framed by wooden scaffolding, building something they were certain their children would ride. By 1923, 2.2 miles of underground tunnel were complete. 4 stations were built below ground: Race Street, Liberty Street, Lynn Street, and Brighton. Race Street was the crown jewel, designed as the system's main hub, with an island platform and 3 tracks. Above ground, 3 more stations went up at Marshall Avenue, Ludlow Avenue, and Clifton Avenue. Think about what that means: stations with platforms, stairwells leading down to concourse levels, ventilation shafts punched through to the surface. This wasn't a half-started sketch. This was built infrastructure, waiting for track and trains. But by 1925, the $6 million was gone, and the subway was less than half finished. The numbers were devastating. Inflation had more than doubled the cost of construction. What was supposed to be a $6 million project now needed another $10 million to complete, possibly 13. The city had tunnels, stations, and graded right-of-way stretching 7 miles toward Norwood, but it had no track, no rolling stock, no electrical systems, and no money. The commission tried to find a private partner to finish the job. Nobody stepped forward. Then politics killed whatever momentum remained. In 1926, Mayor Murray Seasongood and the reform-minded Charter Party took control of city government. Seasongood was a fiscal conservative who viewed the subway as a reckless vanity project inherited from corrupt previous administration. He transferred control of the transit project from the county to the city, cut off communication with the Rapid Transit Commission, and flatly refused to issue additional bonds. The commission, the body that had championed the subway for a decade, was left without funding, without political support, and without any way to raise the $10 million it needed to lay track and buy trains. Meanwhile, something else was happening on the streets above. The automobile was winning. Henry Ford's assembly line had put cars within reach of working families, and Cincinnati's roads were filling with Model Ts. Every year that passed without a subway was a year that more voters bought cars and cared less about finishing a transit system they no longer needed. The window was closing, and the men who held the keys to the money supply had no interest in opening it. By 1927, work stopped entirely. Not paused, not delayed, stopped. And in October 1928, Central Parkway, a wide modern boulevard, opened directly on top of the sealed subway tunnels. The city literally paved over its own subway. Tens of thousands of cars began driving over the tunnels every day, on a road that was itself built in the old canal bed. 3 layers of Cincinnati's ambition stacked on top of each other: a dead canal, a dead subway, and a boulevard full of the automobiles that had made both of them irrelevant. Then the stock market crashed. The crash of 1929 destroyed any remaining hope of raising funds. Tax revenues collapsed. Banks failed. The depression settled over Cincinnati like a fog. The Rapid Transit Commission was dissolved in 1930. The Cincinnati Post labeled the entire project a botch. The subway was officially dead. No track had been laid. No train had been ordered. No passenger had ever set foot on a platform. And the final bill was staggering. The $6 million bond, with taxes and interest, ended up costing Cincinnati a total of $13,019,982.45. The city didn't finish paying it off until 1966, 40 years after construction stopped. Cincinnati was still writing checks for a subway it never used while Americans were watching the moon landing on television, and this is where the story should end. A city that dreamed too big ran out of money and moved on. Except Cincinnati didn't move on. Cincinnati did something stranger. It kept the tunnels. The subway sat empty through the 1930s and 1940s. Proposals came and went. In 1936, someone suggested routing streetcars through the tunnels, but the curves proved too sharp. In the 1950s, a water main was installed in one of the twin tubes, turning half the subway into municipal plumbing. The above-ground stations at Marshall, Ludlow, and Clifton were demolished to make way for Interstate 75 and the Norwood Lateral. But the 4 underground stations survived. sealed, dark, and intact. Then came the Cold War, and someone in Cincinnati had an idea that made the subway's original failure look almost dignified. In 1951, city officials estimated that the subway tunnels could shelter 25,000 people during a nuclear attack. The idea sat on the shelf until the early 1960s, when the Cuban Missile Crisis made fallout shelters a national obsession. In January 1962, the Federal General Services Administration opened bids to convert the Liberty Street station into a prototype community fallout shelter, one of the first in the nation. Construction began in April. Engineers designated areas for first aid rooms, kitchens, generators, decontamination showers, and, in a detail that tells you everything about the era's optimism, dead body storage. The problems started immediately. Workers tried to dig a well for running water. They found none. Vandals broke in repeatedly, and the shelter itself was a farce. The station sat only a few feet below the surface, offering barely more protection than a home basement. The county claimed it could hold 300 people. It contained exactly 8 bunks. By the end of 1963, barely a year after construction began, the Liberty Street fallout shelter was abandoned. Nobody even knew who held the key. In an emergency, no one could have unlocked the door. A shelter inside a subway that had never been used, and a shelter that couldn't shelter anyone inside a subway that couldn't carry anyone. 2 layers of failure, one on top of the other, in tunnels built over a canal that had failed before either of them. And still Cincinnati didn't fill the tunnels in. Still the city maintained them. Proposals kept coming. A local winery wanted to bottle and store wine down there. The Archdiocese of Cincinnati asked to hold a 500-person candlelight communion in the tunnels, but couldn't get insurance. Someone pitched a nightclub. Someone else suggested grain malting. None of it happened. The tunnels sat there, decade after decade, collecting proposals the way other tunnels collect dust. The closest the subway ever came to resurrection was 2002. A regional light rail proposal called Metro Moves, designated issue 7 on the ballot, would have used the existing tunnels as part of a modern transit network. It required a half-cent sales tax increase. Advocates raised $600,000. Most local newspapers endorsed it. A poll the week before the election showed the race within 4 points. Then the votes came in. Metro Moves was crushed, roughly 2-1. 68% of Hamilton County voted no. 86 years earlier, 86% of Cincinnati had voted yes. Now the city that had once overwhelmingly demanded a subway overwhelmingly refused to finish one. In 2008, the city studied its options one final time. It could refit the tunnels for modern light rail at a cost of about $100 million. It could fill them with dirt for $19 million, or it could simply maintain them as they were for $2.6 million. Cincinnati chose the cheapest option, again. Today the tunnels are still there. 2.2 miles of twin concrete tubes running beneath Central Parkway, containing a water main, some fiber optic cables, and nothing else. If you drive on Interstate 75 near the Western Hills Viaduct and know where to look, you can still see boarded-up tunnel entrances from the highway, locked doors to a system that never started. The Race Street station, the one that was supposed to be the system's grand hub, sits in near-total darkness, its island platform intact, its 3 tracks empty, its ventilation grates sealed since the 1950s. Wooden track supports are still bolted to the floor, waiting for rails that were never delivered. Liberty Street still carries the scars of its brief, ridiculous life as a fallout shelter. Partitioned rooms, rusted water canisters, and the ghosts of 8 bunks that were supposed to save 300 people. Brighton Station, the northernmost stop, is visible from Interstate 75 if you know exactly where to look. And Lynn Street has been bricked up entirely, its platform hidden. The water main installed in the 1950s is now nearing the end of its useful life. When it's removed, The tunnels will be truly empty for the first time in 70 years. City council members are asking, once again, what to do with the space. The answer, once again, is probably nothing. Cincinnati's subway is the largest abandoned subway system in the United States. It cost the city $13 million it never got back. It spawned a fallout shelter that couldn't shelter anyone. It survived every attempt to repurpose it, and defeated every attempt to revive it. And it sits there today, exactly as it was left. 100-year-old monument to a city that wanted the future, paid for the future, dug the future out of the ground, and then decided it would rather drive. Here's the question that has no easy answer. If you were Cincinnati in 1927, staring at a half-finished subway and a bill you couldn't pay, would you have found the money to finish it? Or would you have paved it over and hoped nobody remembered? If the idea of a city that couldn't commit to its own subway kept you watching, you should know Cincinnati isn't the only American city with abandoned tunnels beneath its streets. The story of what happened under Rochester, New York is just as strange, and the ending is even worse.